The excitement buzzed through the air as I arrived at my first auto club meeting. The event was larger than I had imagined, with rows upon rows of stunning vintage cars gleaming under the sunlight. The organizers had truly outdone themselves, and I couldn't help but feel a surge of excitement as I wandered through the displays. Each car seemed to tell its own story, from the sleek curves of a classic 1960s Mustang to the bold lines of a 1950s Chevrolet Bel Air. The pride and dedication of the owners were evident in every polished chrome detail and pristine paint job. I was lost in admiration, soaking in the beauty and history that surrounded me. As I made my way through the crowd, my attention was caught by a particularly eye-catching car, a meticulously restored 1967 Shelby GT 500. The car's deep blue paint glimmered under the sun, and the roar of its engine drew a small crowd of admirers. Intrigued, I moved closer, wanting to get a better look. Standing beside the car was a man who exuded confidence and passion. He was speaking animatedly to a group of onlookers, explaining the intricacies of the restoration process. His knowledge was impressive, and his enthusiasm was contagious. I found myself drawn in by his charisma and the obvious love he had for his car. I waited for a break in the conversation before stepping forward. "This is an incredible car," I said, unable to hide my awe. He turned to me with a warm smile. "Thank you. She's my pride and joy. I'm Blake, by the way." "Cynthia," I replied, shaking his hand. "It's clear you've put a lot of work into this. The details are amazing." Blake's eyes lit up. "I appreciate that. It's been a labor of love, for sure. Do you have an interest in cars?" I nodded. "I've always been fascinated by them, especially classics. There's something magical about the history and craftsmanship behind each one." Blake grinned. "You're right. Every car has its own story and its personality. That's what makes them so special." We spent the next few minutes talking about the Shelby GT 500 and the various challenges Blake had faced during its restoration. His passion for the project was evident in every word, and I found myself growing more and more impressed by his dedication and expertise. As the conversation continued, I realized that Blake wasn't just knowledgeable about cars. He was genuinely passionate about sharing that knowledge with others. His enthusiasm was infectious, and I felt a spark of excitement at the thought of learning more from him. After the dazzling show of vintage automobiles, the crowd began to disperse, but my mind was still buzzing with the sights and sounds of the day. I found myself gravitating back towards Blake and his impressive Shelby GT 500. The casual conversations around us faded as we began to chat more intently. "Have you always been into cars?" I asked, genuinely curious about his background. Blake nodded, leaning against his car with a thoughtful expression. "Yeah, ever since I was a kid. My dad was a mechanic, and he used to let me help out in the garage. I guess that's where it all started." "What about you?" I smiled, recalling my journey. "My grandfather had a collection of classic cars. I used to spend hours in his garage, learning about each one. He taught me how to appreciate the beauty and craftsmanship behind them." Blake's eyes lit up with interest. "That's amazing. It's always great to meet someone who shares that kind of passion. Do you work on cars yourself?" "Not as much as I'd like to," I admitted, "but I'm always eager to learn more. Right now I'm working on restoring a 1965 Ford Mustang. It's a slow process, but I love every minute of it." "That's a fantastic project," Blake said, genuinely impressed. "Mustangs have such a rich history. If you ever need any advice or help, feel free to reach out. I'd love to see your progress." His offer made my heart skip a beat. "I might just take you up on that," I replied with a grin. "I could use some expert guidance." Blake chuckled. "Expert might be a bit of an exaggeration, but I do have a few tips and tricks up my sleeve." Our conversation flowed effortlessly, covering everything from our favorite car models to the challenges we'd faced in our respective projects. It was refreshing to talk to someone who not only understood my passion, but shared it so deeply. As the event started to wind down, Blake reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card. "Here," he said, handing it to me. "This has my contact info. Let's keep in touch and maybe meet up to talk cars some more. I'd love to hear more about your Mustang." I took the card, feeling a rush of excitement. "Absolutely. Here's my number too," I said, jotting it down on a piece of paper and handing it to him. "I look forward to continuing our conversation." Blake smiled warmly. "Me too, Cynthia. It's been great talking with you." We said our goodbyes, But as I walked away, I couldn't help but feel that this was just the beginning of something special. Meeting Blake had reignited my enthusiasm for my project and gave me a new sense of community within the auto club. I couldn't wait to see where this shared passion for cars would lead us next. A few days after our initial meeting at the auto club, my phone buzzed with a message from Blake. He was inviting me to the next club meetup, and I couldn't hide my excitement. The prospect of seeing him again and diving deeper into our shared love for cars was thrilling. On the day of the meetup, I arrived early at the club's gathering spot, a spacious garage filled with an impressive array of vehicles. The smell of motor oil and the hum of engines being tuned set the perfect backdrop for what promised to be an engaging evening. Blake greeted me with a warm smile as I approached his workspace. "Hey, Cynthia, glad you could make it." "Wouldn't miss it for the world," I replied, feeling a genuine sense of camaraderie. We started with a tour of the garage, Blake pointing out various cars and sharing interesting tidbits about their histories. His enthusiasm was contagious, and I found myself getting more absorbed in the stories he told. "Over here is my latest project," Blake said, leading me to a sleek 1969 Chevrolet Camaro. "I've been working on restoring this beauty for a few months now. It's been quite a challenge, but I'm loving every minute of it." I admired the car, running my fingers lightly over the smooth surface. "It's gorgeous. What kind of challenges have you faced with it?" Blake sighed, though his eyes sparkled with the joy of the process. "Mainly finding original parts. Some are nearly impossible to track down, and I've had to get creative with a few replacements. But that's part of the fun, right?" "Absolutely," I agreed. "It's the hunt and the satisfaction of seeing everything come together. I'm facing similar issues with my Mustang." We settled near his workspace, and the conversation naturally shifted to our favorite car models, sharing advice and tips on repair and tuning. Blake's knowledge was vast, and he offered invaluable insights into areas where I'd been struggling. "Have you ever thought about upgrading the exhaust system on your Mustang?" he asked. "It can enhance performance and sound." "I've considered it but wasn't sure where to start," I admitted. Blake nodded. "I can help you with that. It's a great modification and relatively straightforward if you know what you're doing. Plus, it'll give you that extra roar you're looking for." Our discussion continued late into the evening, punctuated by the sounds of engines revving and tools clanking around us. I felt a strong connection growing between us, rooted in our mutual passion for cars and the joy of sharing our experiences. As the night drew to a close, Blake walked me to my car. "I enjoyed tonight, Cynthia. It's not often I get to talk shop with someone who's as into this as I am." "Same here," I said, genuinely pleased. "I learned a lot, and it's great having someone to bounce ideas off of." Blake handed me a small piece of paper. "Here's a list of parts suppliers I trust. They might have what you need for your Mustang." "Thanks, Blake. I appreciate it." I took the list, feeling a surge of gratitude. "Looking forward to our next meetup," he said, his smile warm and inviting. "Me too," I replied, getting into my car. Driving home, I couldn't help but feel excited about the future. Our conversations had not only deepened my knowledge, but also ignited a spark of something more between us. The next club meeting couldn't come soon enough. A few weeks had passed since my first meeting with Blake at the auto club, and our conversations had become a regular part of my week. Each meetup brought new insights into our shared passion for cars, but it also opened doors to more personal topics. Tonight, as we worked on our respective projects side by side, the conversation naturally drifted toward our lives outside of the garage. We had just finished discussing the best ways to tune a carburetor when Blake leaned back, wiping his hands on a rag. "You know, I've always found working on cars to be a great escape from the daily grind," he said. "It's therapeutic in a way." I nodded, understanding exactly what he meant. "I feel the same. It's a way to focus on something tangible and see real progress. It's been especially helpful since my divorce." Blake looked at me with genuine interest. "I didn't know you were divorced. That must have been tough." "It was," I admitted, feeling a mix of emotions. "We were together for 10 years. Cars became my solace when things got rough." Blake nodded thoughtfully. "I can relate. I went through a rough breakup a few years back. We were engaged, but it didn't work out. Cars helped me cope too. It's amazing how something so mechanical can be so healing." Our conversation deepened as we shared more about our past relationships, our families, and our dreams for the future. I learned that Blake had a younger sister who looked up to him, and that he'd always dreamed of opening his custom car shop. "What about you, Cynthia?" he asked. "What are your dreams?" I thought for a moment, feeling a bit vulnerable but also excited to share. "I've always wanted to travel cross-country in a classic car. Just me, the open road, and the freedom to explore." Blake's eyes lit up. "That sounds incredible. I've always wanted to do something similar, maybe in a vintage RV. There's so much to see out there." We continued to share our hopes and fears, finding comfort in the similarities of our journeys. Blake's openness made me feel safe to reveal more about myself, and I could tell he felt the same. As the evening wore on, we took a break from our projects and sat down on a couple of old chairs in the corner of the garage. The air was filled with the scent of motor oil and the distant hum of other club members working on their cars. "You know, Cynthia," Blake said, breaking the comfortable silence, "I'm really glad we met. It's not often you find someone who shares your passions and understands you on a deeper level." "I feel the same way, Blake," I replied, smiling. "Our conversations mean a lot to me. It's nice to have someone to talk to, especially someone who gets it." Blake reached out and gently touched my hand. "Here's to more conversations, and maybe even more adventures together." I felt a warmth spread through me as I looked into his eyes. "I'd like that, Blake. I'd like that a lot." As we wrapped up our evening, I couldn't help but feel grateful for the unexpected connection that had formed between us. What started as a shared love for cars had blossomed into a deeper understanding and a bond that seemed to grow stronger with each passing day. I knew there would be challenges ahead, but for now, I was content to enjoy the journey, 1 mile at a time. I could hardly contain my excitement as I walked up to the charming little restaurant where Blake and I had agreed to meet for dinner. It was our first official date, and the anticipation of spending time together outside the auto club was both thrilling and nerve-wracking. The soft glow of the restaurant's lights and the warm, inviting atmosphere instantly put me at ease. Blake was already waiting at a corner table, looking as handsome as ever in a casual yet stylish outfit. He stood up and greeted me with a warm smile. "Cynthia, you look amazing," he said, pulling out a chair for me. "Thank you, Blake. You look great too," I replied, feeling a blush rise to my cheeks. As we settled in, the waiter brought us menus and we began to peruse the options. The restaurant had a cozy, intimate feel, with soft music playing in the background and the gentle hum of conversation filling the air. It was the perfect setting for a first date. "So, what do you recommend?" I asked, looking over the menu. "Their pasta dishes are fantastic," Blake suggested. "I think you'll love the fettuccine Alfredo." "Sounds delicious," I said, setting down the menu. "I'll go with that." Once we had placed our orders, we began to talk about more personal topics. Blake shared stories about his childhood, growing up with a love for cars, and how he had always been fascinated by their mechanics. "My dad was a mechanic," Blake said, a fond smile crossing his face. "He used to let me help him in the garage when I was just a kid. That's where my passion for cars started." "That's such a wonderful memory," I said, genuinely touched. "My love for cars began when my grandfather gave me a toy car set for my birthday. I spent hours playing with it and pretending to be a race car driver." Blake laughed. "Sounds like we both had early influences that set us on this path." As the evening progressed, our conversation flowed effortlessly. We talked about our dreams and aspirations, the challenges we faced, and the things that brought us joy. I found myself opening up to Blake in a way I hadn't with anyone in a long time. "I have to admit," I said, taking a sip of my wine, "joining the auto club was one of the best decisions I've ever made, not only because of the cars, but because I met you." Blake reached across the table and gently took my hand. "I'm glad you joined too, Cynthia. Meeting you has been a highlight for me as well." The warmth of his touch sent a shiver down my spine, and I felt a connection between us that was undeniable. It was clear that we both enjoyed each other's company and that our shared passion for cars had brought us together in a way that felt natural and right. As we finished our meals and the waiter cleared our plates, Blake suggested we take a walk. "There's a beautiful park nearby," he said. "How about we go for a stroll?" "I'd love that," I replied, feeling a sense of excitement. We left the restaurant and walked hand in hand to the park. The evening air was cool and refreshing, and the stars shone brightly above us. We talked and laughed as we walked, enjoying each other's presence and the simplicity of the moment. When we finally stopped by a bench overlooking a small pond, Blake turned to me and said, "Cynthia, tonight has been incredible. I feel like we have something special here." "I feel the same way, Blake," I said, meeting his gaze. "This evening has been perfect." He smiled and leaned in, and as our lips met in a tender kiss, I knew that this was just the beginning of something wonderful. Our first date had brought us closer together, and I couldn't wait to see where our journey would take us next. As the weeks passed, Blake and I continued to spend more time together, our bond growing stronger with each shared experience. Yet, despite the joy I felt when we were together, a nagging doubt began to creep into my mind. Were our feelings strong enough to sustain a serious relationship? What if our shared love for cars wasn't enough to bridge the gap between our different lives and aspirations? One evening, as we worked side by side on a project for the auto club, I found myself distracted and distant. Blake noticed immediately. "Cynthia, is everything okay?" he asked, concern evident in his voice. I forced a smile. "Yeah, I'm fine. Just tired, I guess." But Blake wasn't convinced. He set down his tools and turned to face me, his expression serious. "No, something's bothering you, I can tell. Please, talk to me." I sighed, knowing I couldn't keep my worries to myself any longer. "Blake, I've been thinking a lot lately. About us, about where this is going." Blake's eyes searched mine, a hint of anxiety creeping into his expression. "And what have you been thinking?" I just, I don't know if our relationship can work in the long term," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "We have so much fun together, and I care about you deeply, but I'm scared. What if we're just caught up in the excitement of our shared interests? What if things get complicated and we can't handle it?" Blake was silent for a moment, taking in my words. Then he reached out and took my hand, his grip reassuring. "Cynthia, I understand your concerns. I've had similar thoughts, but I believe that what we have is real. Our connection goes beyond cars. It's about how we understand each other, support each other, and the way we make each other feel." I felt a lump in my throat, touched by his sincerity. But what if it's not enough? What if we face challenges we can't overcome? "Every relationship has its challenges," Blake said gently. "The important thing is how we face them together. I'm willing to work through any difficulties with you, Cynthia. I want us to be honest with each other, to communicate openly about our fears and expectations." His words resonated deeply with me. "You're right," I said, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. "We need to be honest and open. I don't want to lose what we have because of my doubts." Blake smiled, a warm, comforting smile that made my heart swell. "Then let's make a promise to each other. We'll face any challenges together, no matter how tough. We'll talk about our worries and work through them as a team." I nodded, feeling a renewed sense of hope. "I promise." We spent the rest of the evening talking about our hopes and dreams, our fears and uncertainties. The open conversation brought us even closer, reaffirming our commitment to each other. As we sat there, sharing our deepest thoughts, I realized that my doubts had been a natural part of our growing relationship. Addressing them openly had only made us stronger. Blake squeezed my hand gently. "Cynthia, I believe in us. We can make this work." I looked into his eyes and smiled. "I believe in us too, Blake." With that, we continued to work on our project, but now with a renewed sense of purpose and unity. We had faced our first major conflict and emerged stronger for it. Our bond was not just about shared interests, but about mutual understanding and support. And I knew that together, we could overcome anything that came our way. After our heart-to-heart conversation, Blake and I felt closer than ever. We decided that the best way to strengthen our bond was to dive deeper into our shared passions. The Auto Club had several upcoming projects and events, and we were eager to participate together. The first project we signed up for was the restoration of a classic Mustang. The club had acquired the car in a dilapidated state, and it was up to us and a few other members to bring it back to life. Every weekend, Blake and I would meet at the club's garage, ready to get our hands dirty. "Pass me the wrench, will you?" Blake asked one Saturday morning as he leaned over the Mustang's engine. I handed him the tool, watching as he expertly maneuvered it. "You know, I never thought I'd enjoy working on cars this much," I admitted. "But doing this with you makes it so much fun." Blake looked up and smiled. "It's great to share this with you, Cynthia. Your enthusiasm makes it all the more exciting." As the weeks went by, we spent countless hours together in that garage, learning from each other and growing as a team. Blake taught me the intricacies of engine mechanics, while I showed him some of the finer points of interior restoration. We celebrated each small victory, whether it was getting the engine to roar back to life or restoring the leather seats to their former glory. But it wasn't just the work that brought us closer. It was the little moments in between, the laughter over shared jokes, the quiet conversations about our dreams and aspirations, and the simple joy of being in each other's company. One evening, after a long day of working on the Mustang, Blake suggested we take a break. "How about we go for a drive?" he asked, his eyes twinkling with excitement. "Sure, but in what?" I replied, glancing at the half-restored car. Blake grinned and tossed me a set of keys. "My car's parked outside. Let's go." We hopped into his sleek, modern sports car and drove out into the countryside. The wind in our hair, the hum of the engine, and the beauty of the setting sun made it a perfect escape. We talked about everything and nothing, our conversation flowing effortlessly. As the night fell, we found a quiet spot overlooking a lake and parked the car. Blake turned to me, his expression serious. "Cynthia, I'm really glad we decided to do this together. It's made me realize just how important you are to me." I felt my heart swell with emotion. "I feel the same way, Blake. These projects, these moments, they've shown me how much we can accomplish together." He reached out and took my hand, his touch warm and reassuring. "Let's keep doing this, Cynthia. Let's keep finding ways to grow and strengthen our bond." "I'd love that," I replied, squeezing his hand gently. Our shared passions had indeed brought us closer, weaving our lives together in ways I hadn't imagined. Working on the Mustang was just the beginning. There were more projects and events ahead, each one an opportunity to deepen our connection and create lasting memories. As we sat there, hand in hand, looking out at the serene lake, I knew that our journey was just beginning. Together, we could face any challenge, take on any project, and build something truly special. And with each shared experience, our love and partnership would only grow stronger. Blake had a sparkle in his eye as he approached me one sunny afternoon at the auto club. "Cynthia, how about we take a little road trip this weekend?" he suggested with a boyish grin. "Just the two of us, some beautiful roads and the open sky. What do you think?" My heart skipped a beat at the thought. A road trip sounded like the perfect way to escape the daily grind and spend some quality time together. "That sounds amazing, Blake. Where do you have in mind?" "There's a scenic route up the coast with stunning views and charming little towns. We can take my car, pack some snacks, and just drive. No set itinerary, just freedom and adventure," he explained, his enthusiasm contagious. The following Saturday, we loaded up his car with a cooler full of snacks, a few overnight bags, and a playlist of our favorite songs. As we pulled out of the city, I felt a rush of excitement. This was our first trip together, and I was eager to see where the road would take us. Blake took the wheel, and we cruised along the coastal highway, the ocean waves crashing against the cliffs on one side and rolling hills on the other. The scenery was breathtaking, but it was Blake's presence that made it truly special. We chatted about everything under the sun, from our favorite road trip memories to our dreams for the future. Blake's easy laughter and genuine interest in my stories made me feel more connected to him than ever before. "Look at that view," Blake said, pulling over at a lookout point. We stepped out of the car, the cool breeze tousling our hair as we gazed out at the endless expanse of blue ocean meeting the sky. "It's beautiful," I murmured, leaning into Blake's side. He wrapped an arm around me, and we stood there in comfortable silence, just taking it all in. As the sun began to set, we found a quaint little bed and breakfast nestled in a coastal village. The charming place had a cozy room with a balcony overlooking the ocean. We checked in and decided to explore the village before dinner. Hand in hand, we wandered through narrow cobblestone streets, discovering hidden gems, an antique shop, a tiny cafe with the best coffee, and a bookstore filled with rare finds. We ended up at a seafood restaurant by the pier, where we shared a delicious meal and watched the fishing boats come in. Back at the bed and breakfast, we sat on the balcony, wrapped in a blanket, sipping wine and listening to the sound of the waves. Blake turned to me, his eyes soft in the moonlight. "Cynthia, this trip, it's everything I hoped for and more. I love exploring with you." I smiled, feeling a warmth spread through me. "I feel the same way, Blake. This has been perfect." The next morning we set off again, continuing our journey up the coast. We stopped at scenic spots, took spontaneous detours, and made unforgettable memories. We laughed over silly roadside attractions, had deep conversations about life, and shared quiet moments of contentment. One afternoon, as we drove through a forested area, Blake pulled over by a serene lake. "Let's take a break here," he suggested. We spread out a blanket on the grass, enjoying a picnic by the water. The sun filtered through the trees, casting a golden glow over everything. Blake lay back, his head on my lap, looking up at me with a contented smile. "This trip has been incredible," he said softly. "I love how easy it is to be with you, Cynthia. No matter where we go or what we do, it just feels right." I brushed a strand of hair from his forehead, my heart swelling with affection. "I feel the same, Blake. I wouldn't want to be anywhere else, with anyone else." As the days passed, our road trip became a journey of the heart. We returned home with our bond stronger, our hearts fuller, and our minds brimming with dreams of future adventures. The road had brought us closer, and I knew that with Blake by my side, every journey would be filled with love, laughter, and the promise of endless possibilities. As the sun set on the horizon, casting long shadows over the garage, I could feel the weight of the recent weeks pressing down on us. The quiet hum of the car engines, once a soothing backdrop to our time together, now seemed to amplify the tension that had crept between Black and me. The previous arguments had left us both drained, their echoes hanging in the air like stubborn clouds. We had reached a point where every minor disagreement seemed to spiral into something more significant, and I couldn't shake the fear that our connection was unraveling. My doubts about the future loomed large, casting a shadow over the joy we once found in our shared passion for cars. That evening, after another tense conversation about our next car show project, Black finally broke the silence. He looked at me with a mixture of concern and determination, his eyes reflecting the overhead garage lights. "Cynthia," he said gently, "we need to talk. It feels like we're stuck in a loop of misunderstanding. I want to understand what's going on." I took a deep breath, my emotions swirling like the oil stains on the garage floor. "I've been feeling overwhelmed," I admitted, my voice trembling slightly. "There's so much uncertainty about our future, and I'm scared that we're just going through the motions without really addressing the core issues." Black nodded, his expression softening. "I understand. We've both been under a lot of pressure, but I don't want us to lose what we've built together. Let's figure this out, step by step." We sat down on the edge of the workbench, our hands inches apart. The garage was now a sanctuary of sorts, a place where we could confront our fears away from the outside world. Black reached over and took my hand, his grip firm yet comforting. "Tell me everything you're feeling," he urged. "I want to hear it all." As I began to speak, the words flowed more freely. I talked about my insecurities, my fears about the future, and how I was struggling to balance our relationship with our shared interests. Black listened intently, his silence a testament to his patience and understanding. He didn't interrupt, didn't offer solutions immediately. He just listened. When I finally finished, Black took a deep breath. "I've been feeling the same way," he confessed. "I thought if we just kept pushing forward with our projects, everything would work out on its own. But I see now that we need to address these concerns head-on." We spent the next few hours discussing our concerns, hopes, and expectations for the future. We talked about our goals for the car club, our ambitions, and how we could better support each other. It was a candid and at times emotionally charged conversation, but it was also cathartic. We both realized that many of our conflicts stemmed from unspoken worries and unmet expectations. As the night wore on, we began to see a clearer path forward. We agreed on some actionable steps to improve our communication and set aside regular time to discuss any issues that might arise. It was a mutual commitment to work through our challenges together, rather than letting them drive a wedge between us. By the time we left the garage, the air felt lighter, and the path ahead seemed more navigable. We knew that there would be more obstacles along the way, but we felt more prepared to face them together. The roadblocks that had once seemed insurmountable were now just bumps in the road, and with renewed resolve, we were ready to continue our journey. Sitting across from Black in our favorite cafe, the world outside seemed to blur into a backdrop. The gentle hum of conversation and the clinking of cups created a comforting ambiance as we delved into a more profound discussion. Our conversation had drifted from the usual lighthearted banter to something more weighty and essential, the future of our relationship. I've been thinking a lot about us, I started, my fingers tracing the rim of my coffee cup. The warmth of the mug seeped into my hands, offering a small comfort. We've been so caught up in our daily routines and our projects with the car club. I think it's time we talk about where we see this going. Black looked up from his cup, his eyes reflecting a mix of surprise and contemplation. I've been thinking the same thing. We're really in a great place right now, but I want to make sure we're moving forward in a way that feels right for both of us. It's easy to get swept up in the excitement of our shared interests, but we need to think about how we're going to build a future together. I nodded, feeling both anxious and hopeful. Exactly. I love spending time with you, whether we're working on cars or just relaxing. But I also want to ensure that we're building something meaningful and lasting. I've been thinking about what that might look like. Black's expression softened as he considered my words. What if we start by setting some joint goals, not just for our personal lives, but for our involvement with the car club and any other projects we're passionate about? That way, we can keep our relationship aligned with our dreams and shared ambitions. I smiled, feeling a surge of optimism. I love that idea. We could create a vision for our future together and then break it down into actionable steps. Regularly checking in on our progress and reassessing our goals might help us stay on track and ensure that we're growing together. Black reached across the table, taking my hand in his. His touch was warm and reassuring. Absolutely. And let's not forget to carve out dedicated time for just us. It's so easy to let the demands of life and our hobbies take over. We need to make sure we're nurturing our relationship, not just focusing on the external aspects of our lives. I felt a wave of affection and relief. I agree. I think it's important to maintain a balance between our shared interests and our connections. We could also talk about our long-term plans, like where we see ourselves living and how we envision our life together. Black's eyes brightened, and he nodded enthusiastically. Yes, let's do that. Let's dream about our future and be practical about the steps we need to take to achieve those dreams. It's not just about setting goals, it's about ensuring that we're always aligned and supporting each other. We spent the next hour discussing our hopes and dreams. The cafe, with its cozy atmosphere, felt like a sanctuary where we could be completely honest and open. We talked about our vision for the future, exploring ideas for joint ventures, and even discussing the possibility of expanding our horizons beyond the car club. Our conversation touched on our ideal living situation, travel aspirations, and how we would handle challenges that might arise. Black was particularly keen on integrating our personal goals with our shared interests. I think we should look for opportunities that allow us to blend our passions. For example, we could plan trips around car shows or events that interest us. It would keep our adventures exciting and meaningful. I agreed wholeheartedly. That sounds perfect. And let's remember to celebrate our milestones, no matter how small. Achieving our goals together will help strengthen our bond and give us a sense of accomplishment. As our conversation wound down, we felt a renewed sense of clarity and purpose. The future no longer seemed like an abstract concept, but a tangible journey we were excited to embark on together. We made a pact to keep communication open and to face any challenges head-on with a united front. Leaving the cafe, I felt a profound sense of connection and commitment. We walked hand in hand, ready to face whatever the future held, knowing that our shared vision and mutual support would guide us through. The road ahead might be filled with twists and turns, but with Black by my side, I was confident that we could navigate it together, embracing every moment along the way. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm golden glow over the city. The streetlights flickered on, their soft light illuminating the path we walked together. I glanced over at Black, my heart swelling with a mixture of contentment and anticipation. We had come a long way since that first meeting at the car club, and our journey had been nothing short of incredible. Over the past few months, our bond had deepened. We had shared countless hours exploring car shows, working on projects, and discussing our dreams for the future. Each experience not only strengthened our relationship, but also brought us closer together. Our shared passion for automobiles had become the foundation for a connection that went beyond just interests. It had become a shared journey. As we strolled through the park, hand in hand, I couldn't help but reflect on how much we had accomplished. From the initial spark of interest to our heartfelt discussions about our future, every step has led us to this moment. We had faced challenges, navigated uncertainties, and celebrated triumphs together. Through it all, our relationship had grown stronger, and we had both discovered new facets of ourselves. "Do you remember our first meeting at the car show?" Black asked, breaking the comfortable silence between us. I smiled, nodding. "I do. I was so overwhelmed by the grandeur of the event, and then you appeared with that incredible car. It feels like a lifetime ago, doesn't it?" Black chuckled, his eyes twinkling with warmth. "It does. And to think that from that moment on, we've been building something truly special together. Our shared interests have been a great catalyst, but it's our effort, our communication, and our mutual support that have made this relationship so strong." I squeezed his hand, feeling a surge of gratitude. "I couldn't agree more. It's amazing how our passion for cars led us to explore so much more about each other. We've tackled projects together, celebrated successes, and navigated through our doubts. It's clear that we're ready for the next chapter." Black stopped and faced me, his expression serious yet affectionate. "I've been thinking a lot about our future. I'm excited about what's to come, and I want us to keep growing together. Whether it's expanding our interests, pursuing new goals, or simply enjoying life's everyday moments, I'm all in." My heart fluttered at his words. "Me too, Black. I'm ready for whatever comes next. Our relationship has been built on trust, shared experiences, and a genuine connection. I know that we can handle anything as long as we're together." We continued our walk, the gentle breeze rustling through the trees, and the night sky spreading out above us like a canvas of endless possibilities. The city lights twinkled in the distance, reflecting our hopes and dreams for the future. As we approached the end of the park, I felt a sense of peace and fulfillment. Our journey together had been a remarkable adventure, and I knew that it was only the beginning. With our shared interests and the strength of our commitment to each other, we were poised to embrace whatever lay ahead. We paused at a quiet spot overlooking the cityscape, taking in the view. Black turned to me, his eyes filled with determination and love. "Let's make a promise. No matter where life takes us, we'll continue to support each other, celebrate our victories, and face our challenges together." I nodded, feeling a deep sense of unity. "I promise. We've built something truly special, and I'm excited for the road ahead. Here's to us, to our shared dreams, and to the future we're creating together." As we shared a tender kiss, the night seemed to envelop us in its embrace, and I felt a profound sense of certainty. Our relationship had been tested and strengthened by our shared passions and efforts, and we were ready to take on the next chapter with enthusiasm and love. Hand in hand, we walked into the night, ready to embrace whatever the future held, confident that our bond would continue to grow and flourish as we embarked on this new adventure together.